We're slowly going to get started as some more people roll in. So thank you everybody for taking the time from your day, whether it's morning or afternoon or evening, and taking the time to choose to spend this hour with us. We're really excited to have this opportunity to talk to you all about our case study, the Loire Design Lab. But before we get into more of those details, we just want to give you a little bit of a background, why we're here, on behalf of what organization and what this event is all about. So today, this case study presentation is part of the Festival of the New European Bauhaus. So NEB, as we call it, is an organization that is actually led by the European Commission. So it promotes solutions that are not only sustainable, but also inclusive, beautiful, while respecting the diversity of places, traditions, and cultures in Europe and beyond. The festival, very specifically, is an annual series of events. They're in their third edition this year over the course of several days. So there actually is a whole event programming happening in Brussels right now, as well as virtual events such as this one that are happening across the world. And the idea of the festival is really about bringing communities, creators, and changemakers together to celebrate creativity, explore innovative ideas, and shape a more inclusive and sustainable, vibrant future. So with that being said, we are going to introduce ourselves. So we are Mareti Design. We are a holistic international design practice based between the US and France. In the US, we are based in Chicago and work in the larger Midwest region. And in France, we're based in the Loire Valley, but we work across the whole country. So I'm Diana Savic-Jambert.
And I'm Mark Jambert.
And we are the duo behind this design studio. So we have a particular deep focus on healthy materials and sustainable practices. Really for us, the goal of all of our work and our projects is about transforming existing homes into the most optimal spaces for modern day living. So we mentioned just here on the slide a few of our accreditations, which most importantly, we just want to give a shout out again to NEB. We are partners of NEB. That's been since last year, and that's also why we have this opportunity to be part of this event series.
All right, so if we go into what we're talking about today. So as we were expanding our activity in France, quickly came the question of where we would base our activity. And very quickly, we chose this beautiful region of the Loire Valley. And more specifically, this little town that you can see a picture on the right. It's called Saint-Mathurin-sur-Loire. So it's a mouthful, but basically it's a very beautiful, picturesque little village on the banks of the Loire River. Half of the design studio is from the region. I'll let you guess which one. It's a beautiful region with a very temperate climate, and the Loire River specifically is one of the few wild rivers in Europe. And this region in particular is known as the Valley of the Kings.
As we like to say, if the kings were here, there must be a reason. So a little bit more about what is so special about this region. It really is a vibrant and thriving region for many reasons. First and foremost, something that is really the epitome and something that we think about when we do think about the Loire Valley is the material palette. So in the Loire Valley, it's very typical to see tuffeau stone and slate. So tuffeau stone is the local limestone. It's typically what we see on exteriors. We have a few photos that you see, but also the wall behind us is also a tuffeau stone wall. So while it is predominantly found on exteriors and in facades, you do also find it oftentimes in interiors. So between the tuffeau and the slate, they are local materials that historically have been quarried in the region since about the 15th century. So very readily available with people that really are used to working and building with these materials. You find them in all sorts of different dwellings, from chateaus to troglodytes, which are sort of cavernous-like dwellings built into the limestone. But beyond that, beyond the beautiful sort of exterior facades that we see across the region, many consider this larger Loire Valley region as the birthplace of organic agriculture in France. So that really extends from fruit and vegetable production all the way through to winemaking. There's a very big natural winemaking movement that's been happening in the region, as well as biodynamic farming, which is very popular. For us as well, a point that we don't want to miss here is that location is really important. From where we are located with the design lab, we are between two larger cities, and though it is a smaller French village, there is actually a train station in town, and basically from here to Paris, we're there in under 2 hours on the fast train. So accessibility is a really important point to note because that's often not the case in many other places. And so, one other key point for us in this region and really what compelled us and drew us here is there's this artisanal excellence in craftsmanship. So perhaps it comes from the fact that there's these natural materials that we use for building, but there are very skilled masons throughout the region that obviously work really well with the tuffeau stone. And beyond that, there is a deep appreciation for culture and heritage, and of course, preservation of these old and historic buildings in the region.
So more specifically about the space. So it is a 19th century building that we wanted to be basically beyond an HQ. So it's all about creating a hub and revive this space as well, so that basically we can really put forth the space and its uniqueness, and also the uniqueness of the region. We also, because it's a small space, it's only 80 square meters, which is about 800 square feet for the American audience. It's also all about small living experiments, so also really optimize things in the building, and trying to find also like smart solutions to make the most out of the space available. It's also, as I mentioned, a place of gathering and exchange. So we'll talk about this later, but it's also a cultural hub and a place to welcome people. And obviously, we call it also the lab because it's a place where we want to try products on ourselves, on the space, and showcase what we can do with such a space.
So if we go back to how we found this space and what we started with. So for those of you that have just recently joined us, we are going through the evolution of this case study, which is the Loire Design Lab. So this 80 square meter building that is in a small French town in the Loire Valley. This is what it looked like the first time that we ever visited it, from the exterior to the interior. So important notes about what we were working with. The house is about 150 years old. We acquired it, though it wasn't quite in ruins. It was far from anything that we would desire or consider in a ready to move in or ready to use space. It really had experienced years, decades of patchwork renovation, and perhaps the most dire piece of this entire house is that about 100 years ago, it was parceled into 4 different houses. So we have one part of the house, but it actually was part of a much larger block. So we saw a lot of those sort of partitions in the space. But with that being said, did walk in, we saw some potential, but really the moment for us where we knew that this was the space that we needed to really set our vision in was seeing the central staircase. So if you see, it's the middle photo on this slide, and though everything else was in a sort of patchwork and really outdated state, for whatever reason, someone at some point had poured in a lot of love and preservation skills into the central staircase that is made out of carved tuffeau stone, so again, the local limestone, and made with slate treads, everything which was in wonderful condition considering what had happened all around it. So that was really the moment for us that we knew this is the heart of the space. There's something here, and we need to get in there.
So now I guess the fun begins because that's the beginning of the process for us was all about that mood boarding part. And for us, we had in mind all several main criteria that we wanted to use to shed the entire space. So first and foremost, since it's an old home, we wanted to maximize natural light, bring also those principles of biophilia within the design. Obviously, preserving and restoring existing materials when possible, because unfortunately, it's not always possible, but we try to do as much as we could. And when we would bring new materials, we would like to prioritize healthy and regenerative materials in the space, and also trying to prioritize European sourcing and local craftsmanship when possible. Also, as we mentioned, the space is pretty small, so it was all about optimization as well. And obviously, another part that's also very important is the full electrification and thermal efficiency through insulation of the space.
So we know that there's a few people that are still joining us. So we do just want to kind of give a little catch up to where we are. So presenting this space, which is a case study in the Loire Valley, Loire Design Lab. Just going through again our mood board, some of our criteria, and we really want to walk everyone through the process of materials and product selection because to be honest, this was a little bit of an onion method. There was a lot to peel back. There was a lot to decide, and there wasn't necessarily one linear process of how we did it. We began with first and foremost, since this was going to be a space that would be this hybrid sort of design laboratory and living showroom space, we wanted to partner with brands that reflected our same values. So everything from, biophilic design to regenerative design principles to sustainability, healthy, non-toxic materials. And we really, as Mark had mentioned, wanted to give a little bit more of particular preference to European sourcing because that's part of what our training has been and really what we try to strive for in our projects with keeping a carbon footprint as contained as possible where possible. So for us in any renovation, and these are sort of also takeaways that we want to share with everyone, low-hanging fruit that should always be the first consideration is insulation and paint. So for us in this project, we were lucky enough to have found a partner that is creating natural insulation made from a mix of hemp and organic cotton. It's made about 2 hours from us in the Loire Valley. So for us, this was a no-brainer. Between our design practice that is operating both in France and in the US, we come across a lot of different challenges in both places. And insulation is a big topic of discussion because the methods are very different in these respective places. So the fact that we had very easy access to a hemp cotton mix insulation that was being produced less than 2 hours from us, and that our contractors were excited to install and also knowledgeable in installing meant that it was a no-brainer. So anywhere that we took down walls or were replacing any drywall, we installed this insulation that you can see on the left with the company called Biofib. Moving on from sort of, again, the layers of how we designed. Next was paint, which again, for any sort of renovation or interior design project, it's a low-hanging fruit. Paint is covering the majority of your surfaces in the space, which means that it has a high impact on indoor air quality and overall human health. So for us, it was important to experiment again and find the right partners. We worked with Argile, which is a French-based paint company, and they have a bio-based paint line. So this paint collection is made with a mix of different vegetable oils and some clay pigments. And then we also worked with Kind Paint, which some of you might be familiar with. They're a historic brand. They've been around for over 150 years. They're a German brand, and they are a mineral-based paint. So the two examples and results of these types of paint are very different. One is a little bit more granular, with a slight texture, that would be the mineral paint, while the other argile is more of your traditional smooth paint that people are more accustomed to seeing. So again, if we're talking about an onion and peeling back the layers, the next layer in any sort of renovation or overall construction project in terms of materials that are covering a lot of surfaces, that includes flooring and countertops. So for us, telling you all a little bit more about what our decision process was like and why. For flooring, we worked with two different companies in particular. One, which is ICG Italia. So it's an Italian company that is making porcelain tile. We chose this terrazzo inspired porcelain tile. So it's a full-bodied tile, which is what makes this really particular and more innovative. Most terrazzo porcelains are just printed on. So this is actually, you see the terrazzo in the entire body of the tile. And the next material that we were really excited to experiment with was cork floors. We worked with the company Armorim Cork Solutions. And what's important to note about cork floors for those of you that are maybe less familiar with the material. So actually, cork floors are a byproduct of the cork industry. The cork industry is focused on creating cork stoppers for wine. Any offshoots and anything else that comes from that is actually a byproduct, which is pretty interesting. That means that cork floors are sort of a secondary material that comes from the cork industry. And important to note, the company that we worked with is based in Portugal. Portugal is the biggest producer of cork material in the world. And why is cork such an interesting material to build with? It's regenerative. What that means is that the way that cork is harvested, it's almost peeled off of the trees and it can actually grow back. And I think it's about 8-year cycles. So it's a really interesting material because of its health benefits in terms of human health when it's installed, as well as the regenerative properties and its impact on nature. Then if we go into countertops and surfaces, we chose to work with a company called Cosentino out of Spain. Some of you may be familiar. They are most known for two different types of products that they're producing, Decton and Silestone. So their Decton product is essentially an ultra compressed material that's highly durable. And for us, we'll talk a little bit more about some of our specific criteria in terms of material and products, but they hold a few product labels that are very important to us and in how we work. So giving you all a little bit of an idea of how these materials look installed. So from the left, you see both the terrazzo tile as well as the Decton application in a shower. Then you see the cork floors that are installed in a future office. And then on the right, you see more of that Decton, which is that ultra compressed, highly durable material.
And the paint in both pictures, because
yes.
Those are different, the different
yes.
brand paint that we mentioned.
Yes.
Now that we've peeled this first layer of the onion that I mentioned, another space that we always like to focus on is the kitchen, because it's always the heart of the home and where a lot of things is happening and something that needs to be carefully designed. Because it's an old home, we also the way we design, we also like to mix and match with the modern conveniences with this older home. So in that space in particular, as you can see, we went for something very modern with no door handles, just the cabinets, very sleek. We worked with a Ukrainian brand called Corner. Amongst all the different technologies that he used in the kitchen fronts are they using this Italian brand called Phoenix that also has a lot of healthy properties. But the interest for us in that space is, as you can see, we also like to bring a lot of light, because if you remember the picture from the beginning, how the kitchen looks like at first, very dark,
Mm.
very low ceiling. We open this up, bring a ton of light in the space,
Mm.
and have this like beautiful space where you can keep very functional and with a lot of technology hidden in it.
Yeah.
Some more pictures of the space that you can see the Helix windows on top, the different surfaces that we've used, light fixtures, and ultimately it makes a space that it's a home that it's a room, sorry, that you want
Yeah.
to spend a lot of time in.
Yeah. And it was really about as well with such a small space and really limited square centimeters, optimizing anywhere that any cabinet was placed, making sure that it was really thought through, as well as again aiming for innovative solutions because those are the things that make a difference in a well-designed and a well thought out space. One of the reasons as well that we chose to partner with Corner.
Then a few different finishes that we need to mention that we use in the space. There's obviously more than that, but maybe those are a bit of the highlights. For plumbing fixtures, we work with this French brand out of Brittany called Bradano. They made those beautiful faucets and sinks that we used in different places in the space. For the toilets, we went with this famous German brand Hansgrohe. But more specifically, we installed those bidet slash Japanese toilets, so to limit also the use of toilet paper in the day-to-day usage. For the outlets, we went with Corsten out of the UK. And this last one is a very interesting one as well. This is a French brand out of Brittany as well. They called Austria. And basically, like what's of note about this brand, they're using seashell waste to create countertops. So this makes for like a beautiful product in the end that's super unique and
Yeah.
obviously very completely organic. Some little extra pictures of how where we use it in the space, but ultimately like this is the look we wanted to go for. It's like using products that you don't see everywhere and mixing it with something that's more technological
Yeah.
but still very beautiful
And
and with a history behind.
and that each everything was chosen for a reason. There's really a story behind each product selection, each brand partnership. And again, if I can just add to this slide in the middle, the light fixture, for example, it's a French company that's producing 3D printed lights. In any glass that they use, they're working with a company in Poland that has a deep know-how in terms of glass making. So again, each detail was really thought through intentionally, and we're really proud to be able to speak about our brands and our partners because that's really what is bringing the space together.
I'm just going to jump because I see Victoria's question regarding the kitchen. Just going back,
Mm.
why two faucets? That's true. I didn't explain. So in France, we work mostly with internationals investing in France, specifically Americans, and they do like their filtered water. So this faucet is specifically for drinkable water,
Yes,
filtered
it's
water.
filtered water. So that, I mean, let's be clear, the water in this region is very much okay to drink out of the tap. But this is a great example of our partner that Radano that we worked with for the faucets. They were very insistent on us also including the filtered tap. Because that is a product that they're really proud to offer, and that is something that is a little bit less common in France than it is in the US. So again, new things come to the market in different places based on demand as well. And feel free, just a note, if questions do come up through the presentation, please feel free to add them in the chat. We have time for a Q&A at the end, but if there's certain things that we can answer along the way, we will do that as well. So this is an exciting moment to talk about, again, where we began and where we're going, and giving everyone a little bit of a taste of what a renovation process is actually like. If you don't work in this industry, or if you maybe haven't experienced renovation on your own, can obviously be very trying. This is part of, our day to day. But the one thing that we always tell our clients is that in any renovation, especially when we're dealing with older homes, you have to be ready for surprises, but you also have to be ready to listen to the building, listen to the house, because along the way, it will give you indicators of what you should do and what you should not do. And for us at Maradi Design, it's really important to embrace those sort of challenges, and instead of looking at it as a limitation, looking at it as an opportunity and doing something new and maybe pivoting when you didn't expect to pivot. So the story of the pillar is that you see from the first photo when we originally bought the property, there was no pillar. We had no idea what was going to be behind the walls. And as we dipped our toes in and started the first step, which was demolition, we quickly uncovered that there was this tuffeau, so again, the local limestone of the area, this tuffeau pillar, and there was also a hidden doorway that had been covered in drywall. For us, it took us all but 5 seconds to decide that we absolutely wanted to restore it and leave it out on display because it really is the central point of the ground floor. It's the first thing you see, and you actually see it from any angle in the space. So again, uncovered the Chufo pillar, uncovered original wood beams of the house. So these are really points that tell the story of the home. It's a part of the soul of the house, so to speak. And again, for us, this fits perfectly with our values and how we look at design. So instead of covering it back up in drywall, that was the opportunity to leave this out on display. And again, marrying this sort of old and original, part of the home with this new era of the house and the next chapter. So you see this sort of marriage of the dialogue between the past and the present. That's really a pillar that's really important to us across all of our projects. This comes up in several other moments of the project that we'll talk about, but this was the first discovery of something that we really did not expect. And it was pretty much on day one of demo. So,
And it's also, I mean, the thing we always say about restoration is always use those constraints and those things that you discover along the way as opportunities to create something even better. Because again, we could have completely changed everything. We could have keep going with the original idea, but basically you uncover that and then you just reshuffle things and let the house guide you through what should be done, essentially.
Absolutely.
So after this whole construction phase, then came the furnishing and sourcing for all the decor in the house. So for that part, we still wanted to go for a locally sourced product. Still wanted to prioritize healthy materials, and when possible, also go for vintage pieces. Even sometimes marrying new pieces with old ones. As I mentioned earlier, this countertop made out of seashell waste. This one is going to become a coffee table, and we're actually working with our local thrift shop antique shop to source legs that would go with that. So there's also a dialogue in that sense. But every time we want to pay homage when possible to the history of the home. So like with the door handles, we source those from, they made in France out of porcelain, very traditional door handles that you can find in older homes in France. Yeah. But also going for like the light fixture you see on the top left corner, 3D printed, even if the globe is made from an old factory in Poland. But again, trying to really embrace this like duality of the space and how it can speak, they can speak to each other. But ultimately, when we for that presentation, we kind of like sat down and trying to look at where everything came from, and it's actually quite fascinating that overall we were able to source from 15 different European countries, either being from the European Union or the larger European continent, and still counting because we keep adding more products to the space. But it's also a testament to European craftsmanship
Yeah.
and what's being done in Europe and how you can basically source literally everything, right?
Yeah.
And pick out the best from each region. Diana is also Serbian, so obviously the Balkans were also
Yeah.
a big source of inspiration and sourcing for us. And obviously France, because it's as you said, trying to go for the local makers. But literally, again, this space is also Europe coming together
Yeah.
and in one space.
Yeah, this is a pretty proud moment as designers, and in this project that we were able to ultimately put this together of over 15 different countries, and that is truly all of the product that we are sourcing. At the moment, I don't think that there's even a single thing that we could count from anywhere outside of what we have listed here. So that is very fitting in the theme of the Festival of the New European Bauhaus, that is all about celebrating makers and creators, on the larger European continent. So we wanted to give a little idea of what is this space going to become? What can you expect? How does it concern people on the call, and a wider audience? So this space is really about being a hybrid between a living showroom and a design laboratory. A design laboratory first and foremost because it was sort of, our way of having the opportunity to experiment with different products and materials that we want to use in other projects with clients that we've been asked about. And sometimes there's not as much research on the back end, especially with newer and more innovative products and even with some natural materials. So this was the best opportunity for us to be able to take that time and experiment. On the other hand, what do we mean when we keep talking about this living showroom concept? Well, it's a small space, which means that it is intended to be an intimate living showroom. So, with all of the different brands that we've partnered with, the idea is that they have the opportunity to send clients, partners, collaborators to our lab to see and understand what these products and materials are like when they are applied in a real life setting. So again, the space is going to be set up as a house. You will have a living room, a dining room, a kitchen, bedrooms, bathrooms, everything is functioning. We even have been experimenting with the idea that we could potentially have clients rent out the space for a weekend to really get an idea and be fully immersed in the world of Maradi design. Beyond that, with this being such a dynamic space, we really envision it as being a cultural hub of the region. We're lucky to, again, going back to the larger Loire Valley, it really is a region filled with people that are really sustainability minded and focused on what's next, focused on innovation as it relates more largely to the built environment. So we intend to make this space, a point of gathering, a point of social engagement, event programming. We could imagine dinner experiences. And obviously, because it is a space that was so intentionally and meticulously designed, we'd be remiss if we didn't create an opportunity for photo shoots and things like that, whether it's with our brand partners or maybe more largely speaking. But the idea is really that it is an ever-evolving space. This is something that's innovative. It's not the type of space that we come across often. For those that are in the industry and beyond, we have classic showrooms. We have classic interior designer architecture, offices, but we don't really have a space that kind of blends all of these different worlds together. And that's really what we are aiming to do. So the idea is that we would hopefully have a soft launch towards the end of this year, and by early next year, the space will be up and running. And again, we are looking forward to setting up all of this programming and welcoming people from all over the world into our space and to get a little bit of a taste of what Maradi design is all about and why it is so important to prioritize healthy and sustainable materials in our built environment. So we talked a lot and we gave a lot of information. I know some people rolled in a little bit after we had started, but we did want to leave enough time for questions, comments, if there's anything that anybody wanted to maybe see or go over that we had mentioned earlier.
Maybe one housekeeping note, we'll make this event and the recording of the event available later,
Yeah,
probably on YouTube, I imagine.
yeah.
So if you want to
Well,
rewatch, get more of some of the information, I'm assuming some people will also like
yeah.
to take note of the brands, things like that. So obviously that would be available as well.
Yeah, well, this recording, we've been recording from the beginning. This will go out in an email as well. So yes, and if anyone has questions, I mean, you can raise your hand or you can also add it in the chat. We're happy to read through any questions. Um, let's see. If there's any questions about brands or about even this event series, the festival. If anyone has questions about Maradi design. I know there's definitely some familiar faces in the room, so some of you may already be familiar um, with what we do, but we're also available. We put our website down below. You can reach out. Um, but we will, again, we will be sharing the presentation. So Mark brings up a good point for brands and things like that that we worked with that are in most cases available worldwide, maybe with the exception of the installation, but almost all of the other brands would be available even to those in the US or in North America. So that's definitely an added point. Otherwise, we don't want to, let's see. Okay, there we got a question. Let's see. Before buying the place, did you make some sort of analysis to make sure the whole concept would be financially visible and in the end viable and in the end profitable? That's a great question. Um, to be honest, maybe we have two different perspectives on that.
No, so yeah, I mean, obviously there's a definitely a business plan behind that. Absolutely. Even if it's part passion as well,
Yeah,
because we bias to the region and to the space. So we definitely made some decisions, things that we maybe wanted to do that we couldn't do because of financial like the cost
calculations.
of it.
Yeah,
I know that we faced some things as well, and we still going in that phasing because we didn't show there's a little courtyard that we'll touch later. Right now it's untouched and
yeah,
it needs a lot of love.
yeah.
So obviously we had to prioritize in some ways. But no, I mean there's definitely the financial side is obviously very important.
And I want to touch on that question as well because that's a really important that's an important point that I think generally speaking in our industry as designers or even people that work with designers, it feels like a little bit of a mystery point. You see beautiful projects and you don't understand how the numbers always work out. So the difference in this project obviously is that it was personal, I mean professionally personal. But what that means is that there were certain areas where we decided to splurge. There were certain areas, Mark brings up a really good point. We did phase the project. What we originally thought we would have done, and where and where we actually are, I guess I should say a year ago where we thought we would be today and where we actually are, there's a bit of a discrepancy. That's for several reasons. Financially, artisans not being available, sourcing and delays. So common issues that I think almost every project anywhere in the world comes across, but that was something that was very calculated. And, certain areas, again, for us, the installation, again, that's not an aesthetic piece of the project. That was very important to us because as much as we preach health and sustainability, that does mean what's behind the walls and what to the degree that you can control it, what the building is built of. So we knew that we wanted to work with this local partner and use the hemp and organic cotton insulation. That was slightly more expensive than typical, standard fiberglass insulation.
But I must say that overall, like again, because we design professionals and talking to brands, the response was very positive on their end, and we have great partners that really helped us put the project together. So for sure, like we are very grateful to those different partners that we
Yeah,
were able to bring in the project.
absolutely. Let's see. Okay, so the next question. I'm sorry that I'm not necessarily naming names, I'm just answering questions. I'm curious if the Loire Design Lab is in a location that is classed by the Architecte des Bâtiments de France, and did you face any restrictions in your renovations, in particular for the skylights? Okay, great question, and we're going to give some context. So
So yes, we are because the space is
first
literally.
explain what it is for those
Yes.
that.
So in France, there is this particular administrative complication, I guess, that you could call it. When you not so far from a historical building, you need extra authorization to do anything when it comes to the outdoors.
Facade and exterior.
And specifically for us, we literally live like the space is 300 meters from a 15th century church. So something that's obviously classified from
Yeah.
historical.
Yeah.
So yes, we did have to go through different layers of administrative filing and authorization to do any of that. I mean, it's part of the job, I guess, and but you have to go through it, obviously. But in the end, there's some things that we had to modify it a little bit
Yeah.
to fit within the restrictions, but overall, like it went pretty smoothly, I must say.
It's a very common and well-known French authority here, and there's no, comparing again back to the US, where some things you can maybe push depending on where you are. This is a really hard no-go. Like you have to get their approval before you do certain things. Otherwise, you risk major fines and having to redo things. So yeah, we definitely did face that. And just for those of you on the call, if you're comparing different administrative steps in France, that's typically a step from when you would put together basically your file to make a request to modify anything on the exterior. It's about 3 months. And that's hoping that in those 3 months you get approval. If you don't, then you obviously have to modify and you kind of start over. So it can be a little bit of a long and clunky project. And yes, we did have to ask. There's a few things that we didn't mention in the presentation. We're currently doing the last floor, which is basically under the eaves in the old attic space. We've added a window there, and that all required asking for proper authorization.
And also, the space is literally facing
The
City
Lord,
Hall.
yeah,
So
we're
the
facing
people that are
there.
stamping the file. So we
So we definitely need to ask for their approval before we're making
But-
any sort of
But for
modifications.
example, we're about to change to repaint the front door, and for that we also need that authorization. That's we cannot go without that. So.
Yes, yes. Let's see. We have a very good question. Final budget per square meter. So I will be honest, we are still calculating this because of the fact that, as we mentioned earlier, we phased the project. So calculations from the beginning, what we intended to do, and because we phased it and because things changed based on discoveries that we made, certain walls that we didn't take down because they were limestone, et cetera, et cetera. We're getting through the final calculation of that we're hoping to have at the end of summer once all construction is completed. And that is something that we will be sharing because I think it would be interesting to have this in a more formal case study.
But I know for us, one thing that was important is also not to stay within the area comps in terms of price per square meters, so that we don't build like this extravagant space that doesn't fit within the general market. So we have that in mind, and obviously like the partnership that we're going to build definitely help in that regard.
Yeah. But I will say that it's a really important question, and it's sort of something for us that because no budget is infinite. But the thing that was really particular and unique in this journey with this project was that because it was it is a design laboratory, and because we wanted to experiment, I can say very honestly that we're not done with construction, and we already know that there are some things that were done that we would have done differently, that we wouldn't have done that way, based on so many different variables. I mean, another thing that we didn't necessarily bring up in the presentation, but it is a really important note when we're talking about materials, is finding the competent and correct people to install things. I mean, that's a struggle, that's a universal struggle. There's nowhere in the world that that doesn't exist. While we have very skilled stoneworkers here because of, the history of Truffaut and all of that, that's wonderful. On the other hand, it took us, two artisans to find the right person that could install cork floors. They're not necessarily, it's not a complicated material to install, but if you haven't done it before, there's a slight learning curve. So obviously, this is something that's really common across any project that we ever work on, whether it's in the US or in France. There's always a little bit of a learning curve, especially if you're working with new artisans, new contractors. But that's a really important thing that I don't know if people talk about enough, is the learnings after a project and the reflection period of, yeah, there are certain things that we wouldn't do, or there are certain things that we wished we would have done. Um, and all of that was part of for us creating this case study, because we knew we wouldn't have everything perfect on the first go, unfortunately.
But the one thing I would say as well is it's always specifically because we work specifically in that healthy material world, and when you confronted with artisans that don't necessarily know the product and this is the first time they're using it, there's always a learning curve, as Diana said. But the good thing about that is typically afterwards, when they work with it and they saw the benefit of using those products, then they ask more questions and want to use it more. So for example, the installation is a great example. Like as we like to say, oftentimes how toxic a material is when you look at the way people are installing it are dressed.
Yeah.
The hem installation, I mean, it doesn't eat show any of that. It's they don't have to wear specific protection for that. So this is definitely a plus. And same goes for the paint. The paint that we've used, the painter did never use that kind of bio-based paint. And honestly, after they use it, it's like, this is interesting. I'm definitely going to use that more because it doesn't no smell whatsoever, and even to apply it, it's just easier for them.
That's probably something that would be interesting for, this is good as we're getting different questions as well, but I think something that we would need to consider for this case study is, as design professionals, we usually get testimonials from clients at the end of a project, but I can proudly state that up until this point in the project, our testimonials from our contractors has been incredible. From Mark mentioned, the drywallers that were installing the installation, the painters who had never worked with one of the two paint companies that we did the bio-based paint and the mineral paint. They had worked with mineral paint. They had not worked with the bio-based paint, and it was a team of 3 painters, and they could not believe that there was no odor while they were applying and afterwards. They really, that was something that they kept coming back to. And with our project, they now feel more comfortable using these products for different projects, which is an ultimate win because for any architects that are on the call, I mean, I think we would all agree one of the hardest pieces of any project is getting the contractor on board to work with your specifications, not to switch things, not to, substitute things for what they're more familiar with. And it takes a lot of energy from the design professional and a lot of hand holding and sometimes a lot of coercing. So it's really a true win when your contracting team, has enjoyed working with a specific material or product. We have another question. Does Maredi work mostly on residential projects? What is the size of your team, Chicago Loire? So we do focus primarily on residential interiors, though we do occasional commercial work. We'll give a big shout out for a current commercial project that we're working on, which is the Anglophone English speaking library in the Loire Valley in Angers. So that's less common. We've worked, Mark comes from the commercial design world. So that's definitely something in our wheelhouse, but we have more focus on residential interiors. Our team, so our core team is the two of us, and we work with a lot of freelancers and a lot of different consultants
On both sides.
on both sides. So we have a team of architects that we work with in Chicago. We have a team of architects that we work with in France because as interior designers, giving some context, we need stamps of approval in terms of permitting and all of that kind of stuff in both places. So those are our architects. And then based on projects, we kind of adapt. But I will say we run a very lean and agile team because of the fact that we are back and forth. We're a small design studio, and that's definitely done with intention and purposefully. Um, well, we are, let's see, any other? Okay. We are pretty much at our hour of time. I know that everyone has their day to continue on with, whether it's the morning or afternoon where you're calling in from. We just really want to express gratitude for everyone taking the time to be with us today.
And to the New European Bauhaus.
Thank you to the New European Bauhaus for this opportunity. This was such a delight. If anyone has any other questions or anything that comes up, please feel free to reach out. You'll be getting an email and a little recap probably before the end of this week. But thank you again, everyone.